This is your professor, Dr. Brian Lippincott, and this is the history and systems of psychology. I want to talk about the beginnings, the origins in the 1900s and after Nietzsche. I want to talk about the relationship between William James and Carl Jung and the beginnings of transpersonal psychology. So we're beginning to discuss the grandfathers of the unseen. Jung, James, and the bridge to transpersonal psychology, systems and history of psychology. Dr. Brian Lippincott, professor of psychology, clinical psychologist, marriage family therapist, and flow neuroscience coach. I teach at John F. Kennedy School of Psychology at National University. And this is a doctoral level PsyD class in the history and systems of psychology. You can see the brain and the history here. The architects of the transpersonal mind, the structure and the function of the deeper aspects of our soul, of our mind, operating in an era dominated by biological reductionism and Freudian materialism. So reductionism and materialism. These two thinkers dared to ask, what if spiritual experience isn't a pathology, but the highest peak of human consciousness? So Carl Jung worked at the Burkholtze, which is the largest mental health hospital, I think, in the world. At the time Jung worked there, it had 8,000 patients that were the poor people, basically, of Switzerland that needed help and were hospitalized. And William James was the writer of the Varieties of Religious Experience. And so he started bringing in spirituality to psychology way before everybody else. What if spiritual experience, a pathology, which could delusions, hallucinations, and that kind of thing? Carl Jung was dealing with that on a daily basis. But he thought the same thing. I wonder if there's a spiritual connection to this. And that was where he developed synchronicity and a lot of other interesting ideas about the mind and the psyche and the matter being one. So what if spiritual experience isn't a pathology? What if it's the highest peak of human consciousness? The same thing. Now we would talk about the flow state, but that's way in the future. In about 11 weeks, we'll get to that. William James was a pragmatist. He coined the term transpersonal in 1905, right when Jung was at the Burkholtze. Now, they didn't meet together until 1909, but we'll talk about that in a minute. He was the champion of the subliminal mind and empirical researcher of subjective religious experience, the varieties of religious experience. Carl Jung was a depth psychologist, broke with the Freudian dogma to bring cross-cultural mysticism, teleology, the end results, that you have this angel that's drawing you towards the future. That's teleological. There's an end result. You're not being, in a reductionist Freudian sense, pushed forward by your past trauma. You're being pulled forward by your greater self. And Jung also brought in Eastern psychology into the clinical mainstream. And when Jung was going through his confrontation with the unconscious, when he thought he was going psychotic, he would use yoga and certain types of Eastern meditation to calm himself down when he was getting aroused. Now, let's go into Jung a little bit in his history. When he was an undergraduate even, he did lectures, and this is about the Zofingia lectures. So the soil of the unseen, the base roots of it, of Jung's Zofingia lectures. The Zofingia Society, during his medical studies at the University of Basel, Jung joined Zofingia, a student group his father had also attended. Here he delivered passionate lectures actively exploring parapsychic phenomena and the occult. So we're talking about the roots, and the Zofingia lectures that Jung gave were very important to the beginning of his analytical psychology. So the maternal line, Jung inherited a deep fascination with mysticism, clairvoyance, and the occult from his mother's side of the family, encountering unusual spiritual gifts early in life. And his mother would have prophecies and visions, and Jung had a cousin who at this time, a lot of people were involved in seances and trance-like phenomena, clairvoyance, talking to the dead, all that. And people would channel spirits that they would talk to the dead. And Jung's cousin, Emile Preiswick, was the person who did that in his family. And he did Jung, when he got his MD, also got his Ph.D., and he did a study of the apparent occult phenomena of his cousin and how she was taken over by spirits and how he called those autonomous complexes. So he started developing his theory of his complex theory at that point. It was very complex, but it was also about the complexes. Like when you're taken over by the father complex or the mother complex or the trickster complex, you're acting out those things. Jung argued that trance states were not mere hysteria or pathology, as early psychoanalysts claimed, but rather the raw data of an autonomous unconscious mind actively seeking expression. I want to say that clearly. It wasn't merely hysteria or some other kind of psychosis. Jung was the one who, with his mentor, Bueller, created the word schizophrenia. Before, it was called dementia precox, but it was delusions, hallucinations, grossly disorganized speech and behavior, that kind of stuff. And that's the early psychoanalysts claimed, which is Freud, claimed that it was a pathology. But the raw data of the unconscious mind seeking expression was what Jung saw. And Jung is always related to expressive arts therapy from the very beginning. The Anomalies, Trance, and the White Crow. I have the White Crow here. And so the idea is if you wish to upset the law that all crows are black, you mustn't seek to show that no crows are, because that would be impossible. It is enough to provide one single crow to be white. So we're looking at that one outlier, that one synchronistic event, that one thing that happens that shows that it's falsifying, really, in scientific method. It shows that there is a case where all crows are not black, that there are some that are white. The catalyst, Mrs. Lenora Piper, an American trance medium who defied materialistic explanation. William James, studied her rigorously, going to all of her trances, realizing her trance state tapped into the superior co-conscious. So superior co-conscious. She was tapping into something. Now, Jung would later, just a little foreshadowing here, Jung would later call that the collective unconscious. But it shows how James and Jung were on the same page. The bridge. Mrs. Piper's trance state directly mirrored the phenomena Jung was fascinated by in the Zofingia lectures. She became the empirical proof that the boundaries of the individual were an illusion. And we know now we're all interrelated. Where does one person stop and another begin? When you're in a flow state, you lose your ego judgment. We are one with the world. That's why Jerry Rice isn't thinking about, I'm going to score a touchdown, I'm going to get the Super Bowl MVP. If he's thinking that, he's going to miss the ball and drop the ball. He doesn't even think he's separate from Joe Montana when he does the catch. They're one. They're in a participation mystique. They're in a flow state where they've lost their ego boundaries and the team can become one. And I love working with teams because when that team does gel together and become one, or a family becomes one and interconnects and has that communitas, it's a miracle. It's a beautiful thing. 1909, the meeting at Clark University. William James says, Dr. Jung, orthodox scientists dismiss Mrs. Piper as a fraud, but in her trance, she demonstrates knowledge she could not possess. She is my white crow. She proves the boundaries of the individual mind are an illusion. So there's psyche, and we're the radio receiver of consciousness. So they're studying consciousness and transpersonal ideas. Jung says back, I agree entirely, Professor. I have studied similar translates in my Zofingia days. Freud insists these are mere hysterical symptoms, a pathology of repressed sexuality. But to me, they are an exteriorization of a much deeper autonomous unconscious. So these trance people are exteriorizing, they're acting out, they're bringing it out into the world a deeper autonomous, meaning the unconscious, the collective unconscious is a thing in itself. You don't have your collective unconscious. Your collective unconscious has yous, you and yous, because maybe you have multiple yous. Everybody does. Those are called ego states. James replies, exactly. They are tapping into a cosmic reservoir. We must evaluate these phenomena not by their origin, but by their fruits, what they give, what the end result is. And again, both James and Jung are teleological. They're not reductionistic. They're practical cash value of the human soul. They're making real the human soul in an explicit way, breaking down the Freudian dogma. So here we have Freud's psychoanalysis, James-Pragmatism, which we call functionalism, and Jung's analytical psychology. These are three things that occurred in the same kind of basic within the 50 years. They all met each other, knew each other, that kind of thing. At another point, we'll talk about when Jung came to these lectures with Freud in 1909, how Freud passed out and all about their dream work together at some other point. So for Freudian psychoanalysis, nature is deterministic and biological. For James, it's empirical and subjective. James is moving toward becoming a phenomenological philosopher. He believes it's a phenomena. It's not just determined by molecules. There's actually some subjective experience that's really important. Jung saw nature as teleological, by end results, and symbolic. So we're being pulled forward by this angel or this daemon, not in the negative sense, but in the sense that Socrates had a daemon, that Socrates' daemon would only say, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, but it kept him humble. So teleological is your true self is pulling you forward. That's the acorn has to become the oak tree, and it's symbolic in nature. So the subjective and the symbolic, you see where we're going here. The focus for Freud, causal, past focus analysis of your history, which is still a dominant view in the psychology today. And I always tell my students in training, it's really good to work with children because then you can see where everything started. Now that's the old Freudian hangover getting a hold of me. But there is a real value in looking at people's history. I go along with Bowen. Sometimes a genogram and going back 3 or 4 generations, it can externalize the problem in the idea of narrative therapy and make it's not your problem. This is a multi-generational problem. We're trying to change the pattern and not have your kids live in the same thing, a lifestyle and the same situation that you had. Now, James-Pragmatism, the focus is on cash value, future focused utility, how this is going to be useful for the person's future, how is it going to grow and help them transform and develop and have a meaningful life. The focus is on synthetic for Jung. That's putting together, transcending and rising above by bringing together the opposites. Prospective goals of the psyche, that the psyche has its own idea of what it wants you to become. And it might be to save all people from suffering, or it might be to become Hitler. As when we talk about war, we'll talk about James Hillman's ideas of war, and he really psychoanalyzes in a deep way Hitler. But you're being drawn, whether it's good or bad, I don't know, but you're being drawn forth by something that you have to do that kind of captures you. I think for everybody in this class, if you're taking a psychology class in order to become a therapist and help people, then you're probably more into generativity and wanting to help the next generation. The view of spirituality. Freud saw religion as a neurosis, as a pathology, that you're inventing God in order to not deal with the existential reality or the death instinct and that kind of thing, and your drives. James' view of spirituality, religion as healing and integration of opposites. Again, there's that idea of bringing opposites together. Now, Jung throws in spirituality as a path towards individuation, which is your individuation. You're never going to really get there, but you're going to get closer and closer and closer to what your angel, quote angel, your true self, is pulling you forward to. I use the word angelic many times in the way Hillman used it, and other Paris Jardin and other philosophers have thought of that moving towards this true self. The unconscious, for Freud, is a repository of repressed trauma. It's basically pushing everything down. For James, it was a gateway to a cosmic reservoir. So the healing, as James started seeing the unconscious as being the healing force, and how art and expression of yourself and dance and movement and all those things can be all spiritual experience. Is tapping into that cosmic reservoir, which is a healing thing and can be very helpful. It can also be destructive too. Just like the flow state can be the greatest high that you get experience, but you can get high tagging as a gangbanger. You can be tagging the grocery store with your and your number M614 or whatever it is, 13 or 14 or whatever, and you're really excited, but you get in trouble by doing those things. A lot of criminal behavior is also in the flow state. The unconscious, an autonomous source of higher wisdom. So again, it's positive. Meeting James gave Jung the theoretical courage to stand on his own and break from Freud, to adopt the pragmatic rule, building in psychology that honored spiritual reality based in its intense psychological effectiveness. Essay in Anima, bringing out the anima, the soul of the world. So, mapping the depths. From the mother sea, which is what William James called the unconscious, the mother sea, that you're floating in this reservoir, this cosmic reservoir. So you can see, Jung called that the collective unconscious. So you see these little islands. That's the individual ego, the conscious waking self, isolated and distinct. It's above the water. That's what we think our lives are this little thing here. Then you have below, a lot more of it is under the water, right? Like an iceberg. The personal unconscious. That's everything that happened to you in your life, things that you don't remember, all the things in this room that I don't know are in this. Oh, there's my cane over there. There's my walking stick. All these different. Oh, there's my 49ers jersey. Oh, I could get distracted by all that, but I have to shut down the part of my brain that can get distracted to focus on what I'm talking about right now. So that's my individual ego is doing that. It's causing me to focus. It's isolating me from all the experience I could have had. The personal unconscious is just our unconscious since we were born. James's mother sea, that's the deep ocean. Our lives are like islands in the sea. The islands hang together through the ocean's bottom. Just so there is a continuum of cosmic consciousness into which our several minds plunge us into a mother sea. So there's so much in that. We're like islands. The islands are together at the ocean's bottom. That's our part that's collective. We're all really more alike than we are different as human beings and as animals on this earth. Just so there is a continuum of cosmic consciousness into which our several minds plunge us into the mother sea. That's the deep ocean. So James hadn't got to the point of really seeing it as the unconscious. He saw it as an aspect of consciousness that we can tap into, which is basically the same thing. But he called it the mother sea. And this is William James. Jung's collective unconscious. Jung formalized James' reservoir into an evolutionary museum of ancestral memory. Ooh, that's poetic. The deep tectonic structures represent purely formal archetypes as sets. The plates are shifting and glacially. That's really the deep part where you get into the collective unconscious and into the depth of the unknown, the mystical unknown, which is even beyond the collective unconscious. Now, I personally believe that right under this subsurface, right under this, there's a family level of unconscious where we're all connected with our legacy of our ancestors. And here, I think deeper in here is a cultural level of the unconscious where all these cultural phenomena, cultural complexes hang out. And then finally, you're going to get down here to the collective unconscious. I believe there's different layers in this aspect here. And that's maybe because of being a family therapist, but I've seen that in my book. I deeply go into the family unconscious and the cultural unconscious. That term was coined by the little Yoda looking Henderson who was at the Jung Institute of San Francisco. He was one of the founding members, Joseph Henderson. And he was the one who coined the term, not collective unconscious, cultural unconscious as a layer here. And he looked like little Yoda, and he's passed away now, but he was John Beebe, the famous analyst that I really honor a lot. He was his analyst. And that's how you can look at yourself in Jungian psychology. They have the Jungians that were analyzed by Jung, and his first people that were either analyzed by Jung or analyzed by people that were actually analyzed by Jung. And then the second layer, the post-Jungians, term coined by Andrew Samuels, Andrew Samuels, are the people that are one generation into it. In the second generation, people that were analyzed by somebody in Jung's inner circle by the second generation of that. The third generation is called Neo-Jungian, which is a term coined by Stefano Carpani, an Italian analyst who coined the term Neo-Jungian. Jung formalized James' reservoir into an evolutionary museum. You see down here in the deep structures. The deep tectonic structures represent purely formal archetypes as such. Now, that's the forms of Plato. That's a very similar concept, not exactly the same, but these archetypes are very related to Plato's ideas of the forms. And the teleology, the end result, moving towards the end, the acorn theory, that goes all the way back to Aristotle. He's the one who coined the term teleological. The clinical toolkit, activating the unconscious. So these two, James and Jung, in their collaboration and their cross-semination of each other, psychotherapy is meaning-making. Healing is not merely symptom reduction. It's a teleological process of finding a spiritual outlook and achieving moral autonomy. That's individuation. Now, in our modern, contemporary, really rich, actually, United States and the Western world, we have individualization kind of given to us. You can be whatever you want to be. You can do whatever you want to do. You have freedom. You can leave your family. You're not stuck in this traditional way of doing things that are kind of that participation mystique. You can be your own self, whoever you want to be, and all the different mixtures of that. But individuation is finding out who you really are in a deeper way. So you have to really explore your shadow side and the side of the other, the animus, or now we've coined the term animum, which is a tripart way of looking at it. It's much more, but that's a whole other lecture. So I just want to point out the difference between individualization, which is a sociological term that Carpani and other sociological-minded people utilize for what we all have in our contemporary world. And it's becoming more across the whole world at this point because people's standard of living is rising and their ability to leave their family and do what they want to do and not be dependent on these social structures like the church and that kind of thing. So we want I plus I, individualization, which we already have, and individuation, finding our true self. The way we do that is through dream work, active imagination, or a lot of expressive arts are in this. Dance, movement therapy, authentic movement, somatic psychology, all that. Dream work. Dreams are not just disguised repressed wishes, which is what Freud thought. They are the mother sea, communicating perspective, leading us forward, prospective, not retrospective, guidance, and symbolic meaning that rationality cannot construct. It can't come from rationality. It's almost like magic, or what we have these theorists that we're going to talk about in this class that have defined it, but what we used to think is magic. Just like if an alien came and had all this technology, we would think it was magic. Okay. Active imagination, a waking trance state. So it's like if a dream is diving deep into the unconscious, active imagination is diving into a pool. I like a pool that I go swimming in every day, that. So it's a little lighter, but it's more able to be related to, learn from it. So it's actually maybe more therapeutic. Although a lot of people like James Hillman believe that just having the dream, or when a child makes a sand tray, the making of the sand tray, I firmly believe is just healing in itself for the child's psyche. You don't have to interpret it and say, oh, that's his dad and that's his mom and all that. Just the dealing with archetypal imagery is healing in itself. That's Jungian-based art therapy, and Jungian-based research is a method of researching through the arts, a deliberate pragmatic method to safely interact with archetypal energies. So just relating to archetypal energies is healing in itself, even if you don't understand it. But if you can confront the shadow and start to understand it, then you're not so overwhelmed by the unconscious. That's your key to unlock the magic here of the light. And this is your compass, the meaning. Okay. A lot of people don't know that there was a connection between William James and Carl Jung in the creation of AA. So, the pragmatic insight. Let's see. The medical did end. This is where it all starts. In the saying that Jung wrote in a letter to Bill W. was spiritus contra spiritum. It's no accident that alcohol is called spirits. So we're looking for something spiritual as the idea in addiction, but we're looking for it in all the wrong ways. And I have noticed it just clinically in my career, people that are into downers like fentanyl, tramadol, heroin, things, those people are trying to kill pain, some kind of past pain. Okay, people that like psychedelics, weed, more stimulating sometimes like cocaine, those kind of things that give you visions and ideas and move you on. Those people are trying to seek that high. They're trying to seek that ecstasy that they can't get in their normal reasons, because all of our religion, all of our depth, all of our mental capacity is taken away by these computers, so we don't have spiritual visions and ideas anymore. They're really seeking that ecstasy. They're seeking the spirit, but they're seeking it in a way that's going to actually go in the wrong way. Jung treated American alcoholic Roland H., eventually declaring him medically incurable. He said, I can't help you. And he said, only thing that Jung told Roland H., the only thing that I think can help you is to have a religious conversion. And he said, go back home to America and go to Oxford, because there's a group called Jung told Roland H., go to the Oxford group. The Oxford group at that time had the 10 steps, which was basically analyzing your shadow and all your wreckage of the past and how you got to this point, committing yourself to a higher self, a higher power, a God, however you describe. It was the 12 it became the 12 steps of AA, but it started off as the Oxford group, and they only had 10 steps. Jung stated his only hope was a genuine, overwhelming spiritual conversion. And he did. And he met Bill W. And then Bill W. started writing Jung and saying how, wow, you kind of created this thing. And Jung and Bill W. lived long enough to see how AA turned out and how many millions and millions of people it helped. And this clinical realization directly intersected with James's Varieties of Religious Experience, which I told you about earlier. That's his famous book. Intellectually validating the concept of deflation at depth, going deep, okay? Not inflation, becoming God yourself, but going deep into your own unconscious. Together, the frameworks of Jung and James inspired Bill Wilson to found Alcoholics Anonymous. The pragmatic insight, okay, what Jung got from James that eventually became, okay, Jung got his pragmatism from insight from James's functionalism and started bringing it out in creating therapies, which like active imagination and things previously discussed. Jung realized that the craving for alcohol was a misdirected spiritual thirst for wholeness. So you're really thirsty for other things. Okay, the craving poison, alcohol, spirit, could only be defeated by the highest religious experience, divine spirit. So you got to find the real spirit, however you find it. Might be in dance, it might be in movement, it might be in sports, it might be being a therapist and helping others. Could be a million different things. The bridge to transpersonal psychology, the Western limit. Okay, brain. Traditional Western psychology stops at the formation of a healthy, stable ego. We want to have ego strength. And in adolescence, we want to build ego strength. In child and adolescent class, you're going to talk about interpersonal therapy, which is relational. Okay, and how you get in these cycles with other people, but it's a relationship of your ego with the world. It views psychological development as complete once an individual can function in society. That's like what Freud said. If you can love and you can work, you're good, according to Freud. Well, maybe you want something greater than that. What is the transpersonal horizon? William James and Carl Jung argued that a healthy ego is merely the starting line. You've got to transcend your ego. Jung always used to say, every victory for the self, with the capital S, means a defeat of the ego. But Tina Stromstad, a modern contemporary San Francisco Jungian analyst who is a dance therapist extraordinaire and one of the inventors of authentic movement with Marion Woodman and others, she says the same saying like this: every success of the self means a submission of the ego. So we want the ego to learn to submit to the higher aspects of our life. And as you age, that will happen. But that's a much more elegant way of saying it than what Jung actually said. Tina Stromstad, Jungian analyst in San Francisco. If you want to really get into dance and movement and somatic experiencing therapy from a Jungian standpoint, Tina Stromstad is the ultimate for that in the San Francisco area, at least. Okay, definition. Transpersonal psychology explores what happens when consciousness expands beyond the personal ego. So consciousness grows and develops beyond the mere personal to the whole, one with everything. From a Buddhist point of view, emptiness and losing the self and being empty. From a Abrahamic tradition, Islam, Judaism, Christianity, the same thing as losing the self in Buddhism is becoming one with everything, with God, becoming one with the universe, the imatio Christi. That is, so really to me, they're the same thing. I've asked over and over so many famous people in my lifetime, what's the difference between being one with everything or being in the emptiness? And when you figure that out, tell me. I choose, personally, I like, and maybe it's my upbringing, my own cultural unconscious, but I'm more for becoming one with everything. I can really relate to that more than the emptiness, but I understand the meaning that these are distinctions. We're entering in transpersonal psychology into an area that is beyond, it's ineffable. You can't talk about it. There's no words. Words can't really express it. What happens when consciousness expands beyond the personal ego? Whoa, flow, incorporating Eastern mysticism, non-ordinary states, and peak experiences, which comes from Abraham Maslow, who we'll talk about later. But flow state is a type of peak experience to achieve true wholeness. Okay, East, as we alluded to, the chakra system model. So we know there are 7 chakras: the root chakra, the sacral chakra, the navel, the heart. I can't pronounce these Sanskrit words, the throat, the voice, being able to talk and get your voice, in the sense of the brow, third eye, and the crown, your relationship with the transcendent. Okay, cross-cultural leap. Jung was the first major psychologist to rigorously engage the Eastern Hindu psychology, specifically Kundalini. So the chakras believe that what Freud called the libidinal energy gets moved from down here, moved up here. And if you look, same thing, Abraham Maslow, you have to have your biological needs, and then you have to start to belong and get some power in the world. Then you develop compassion, self-esteem. It's the same pattern of development looked at from different cultural metaphors and symbols. The developmental map. So this is development, how you move spiritually and psychologically and to become one with the universe, or become one with your family, or you help the culture move out of the craziness we're in, one little bit at a time. The developmental map. We can map James and Jung's transpersonal theories directly into the chakra system. The chakras are not merely esoteric symbols. They are inner playroom of developmental milestones as you go through. And this is what I consider the most important one in family therapy, is developing the heart. Okay? The framework. The system tracks along the lifespan from pre-personal dependency through personal ego formation, right about here, and ultimately post-egoic transpersonal wisdom. Woo! We're up here. Okay. Self sphere. Now we're talking about the chakras, but we're kind of talking about the two halves. The lower hemisphere, the objective, building the ego. As a kid, your brain. You could also put the brain going from the bottom up, too. The root, Mudalahara, infancy, focused on basic survival, security, and the transition from fear to security. The sacral, I can't pronounce it, but you can read it there. Svadhana, early childhood, focused on sensuality, differentiation from the collective, and establishing self boundaries. Then we get into adolescence and adulthood, the navel, the stomach chakra, focus on willpower and ego defense. Okay, St. George. St. George defeats the dragon at this aspect here. St. Michael ties himself to the dragon is going to kill the world, destroy the world, and St. Michael knows he can't beat it. That's the midlife crisis, which we'll get to in a minute. St. George kills it, and that's adolescence. You kill your dragon, you develop your ego. Relate to the shadow in early 20s and 30s. You develop your shadow. Then you start going into the other side. Most Western developmental models stop here, trapped in subject-object attachments. Okay, the self sphere, the upper hemisphere. Okay, the objective, transcending the ego. So the flow state is shutting down the critical ego in your brain. And we know from neuroscience, when you get into that flow state, Jerry Rice is not thinking, I'm Jerry Rice and I'm a star. He's thinking, the ball and I and Joe Montana and the blockers on the team are all one. Not to use a football metaphor, but you can think of it in a lot of different things. A SEAL team. Everybody on the SEAL team is leader. It's maximum leadership. Everybody is a leader. So the lower person in the SEAL team goes first into a building. If he goes left, the commander who's right behind him is going to go right. The guy made the decision. We're all leaders. That we transcend our ego. We become one with a group, like our family. That's my theory in my book of family flow, how to use Jungian ideas to get to that idea. So we start here, the heart, the pivotal bridge. Relinquishing subjective ego attachments to active, selfless love and compassion. The throat, re-engaging, that's your voice. Being able to gain your voice and tell your particular truth and express yourself. Re-engaging universal consciousness, characterized by creativity, nurturing, and moving beyond isolation. The brow, the third eye. The attainment of deep wisdom, intuition, and affectionate detachment from material outcomes. You're doing your job not to make money, to help other people. And if God or the higher power or the world really wants you to do that, in which they really do need that help out there, then you'll be able to get a job. This is a great time to graduate with a degree in psychology. Okay, the world needs you, and our job is not going to be taken over by AI. I think this is pretty safe for a long time. The crown, total union. The psychic membranes dissolve, the individual returns fully to the mother sea of consciousness. So this is the highest state. But you don't really live there a lot. I don't know many people do, but if you can, it really is a bliss when you get there. As Joseph Campbell says, follow your bliss, which is a whole other thing. So the modern synthesis, clinical and flow perspectives, historical roots, which is what this class is about. From James, validating the subjective, our own phenomenological experience. Okay, as clinicians, we use James' radical empiricism to validate the profound psychological reality and healing power of our clients' peak and flow experiences. So the varieties of religious experience, our subjective experience of God. God is in me, and also he has effects on other people. Like at Christmas time, I buy people all these, I do that for spiritual reasons. I mean, we have cultural things that happen. Now, Jung brought in the clinical therapy. From Jung, clearing the blocks, our complexes. We utilize active imagination, dream work, and shadow work to clear energetic and psychological blockages in the unconscious. So we're able to, that's, if you're all blocked up, you can't flow. All these complexes are causing you to, and these roles and these identities we have capture us, and then we can't become our true self, which is going to expand beyond those. The flow states in neuroscience, this is where we're at now, which is foreshadowing a little bit, from the chakras, achieving true flow. As flow coaches, we recognize that sustained flow requires both a grounded, secure ego, the lower hemisphere, and an open, fearless connection to the transpersonal purpose, our massively transformative purpose, the upper hemisphere. For instance, I have a colleague, a friend, Stephen Kotler. Stephen Kotler talks about how we develop into this flow state here. And his massively transformative project is he has a huge, in his home, he got a whole area. He has animals that are dying of cancer that nobody will take. And so he has a whole bunch of hundreds of kennels that he takes care. He wrote a whole book about that. But that's, as a kid, he said, I want to save animals from suffering. And he put and now he's devoting his whole life to that, amongst other things, because that's what really gets him into flow. Teaching this class gets me into flow, so that's why I like doing it. The unseen made visible. William James and Carl Jung mapped the unmappable. From the anomalous trance states of Mrs. Piper to the developmental wisdom of the chakras, they built the what modern transpersonal psychology walks upon today. Okay, they gave us the journey, the path to walk along. They taught us that the human mind is not an isolated deterministic machine, as Freud taught, but an island, which we'll go into, but an island intimately connected to the vast, luminous mother sea of human consciousness, which Jung called the collective unconscious. But I like the luminous mother sea of human consciousness. That's very poetic. Okay. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed this a lot. And I look forward to answering any of your questions in class, or if you're watching this online, put a comment in there and a question, and I will ask you. And I also hope to put a couple questions in there, like a little quiz for you to kind of see what you got out of it. And also for my students, if they missed the lecture, they could watch it and they could answer one of the questions, make a comment to me, and then I'll know you watched it. Okay. Not that I'm really trying to track people what they're doing, but that's a way for you to be sure that I know that you watched the video if you missed this. Thank you very much.